I was not me. Every instinct fought to close my eyes, but they were not mine to close. Trapped in another body, in the half-second it took for reality to phase in and properly become visible to me, I had nothing but a sense of enclosure and claustrophobia. I did not like this. Who was I? Why did my back feel better? My ear was fine. How? What was that on my head? Why didn't I feel like a buck? Oh, that was why. My host... Wait, my what? How did I know that word? Opened her eyes as I gazed upon the outside world, a spreading wasteland of shifting, unhealthy color, and a yellow overcast sky. Hardly the paradise I'd come to picture these days as my eventual escape location. I could hardly look around, however. Not only because the mare I embodied wasn't, but because I couldn't quite get over the fact that I was a mare. Not entirely something I was comfortable with. Everything felt different. I was too tall. My head was held too high. Why did my lungs feel clear? Oh, goddesses, I had forgotten how it was to properly breathe. I couldn't be sure. Was my host's head spinning, or was it just all this? Did I still have my own feelings? Why couldn't I blink when I wanted to? I didn't want to trot through the waste with my head held high. Every pony would look at me. I just wanted to lower myself down and not be as open in my stance. In an attempt to calm my mind, I focused on what was ahead. This mare was striding forward through the bleak forest of brittle wood. Mountains rested either side. Was this a valley? Whatever it was, in the fuzzy daytime of an overcast equestrian wasteland, the general difference between it all was very difficult to ascertain. The mare was tired, that much I could feel, and she had a very large weight upon her back. Wait, hadn't Glimmerlight said this was her memory? Was I Glimmerlight? The ramifications of what I might experience from the things she had done rammed home very hard, and hopefully not literally. But short of any professional buck hunting, instead the idle travels seemed to bring her into a heavily clustered wood. Part of me wondered if I should feel free. Was this the freedom that Protégé had spoke of? To wander the world alone? The silent world around me just felt empty. Where were the wondrous things I had imagined and drawn passionately upon the walls? This was so lonely. No, not alone. Not for long. Very soon she found a village. Small mud and reed huts reinforced with heavier wood supports. It camouflaged well in the woods. Covered fires and small patches where Brahmin wandered to and fro made up the outskirts, as ponies of all shapes and sizes began to stand up and watch Glimmerlight approach. Nerves demanded I run, or find the biggest one and offer my services. Hey, folks! What's cooking for a long-term traveler looking for a place to stay? Well, not how I'd have done it. Every pony turned to stare at her. Glimmer's voice rang out loud amongst the village as more and more ponies gathered. I saw foals hiding behind parents as larger bucks stood ready with clubs. Casually, Glimmerlight stood her ground as an elderly mare approached. Her cutie mark was the head of a Brahmin, while her sullen brown face and coat marked a life much longer than any I had known in the wastes.
How did you find us? Creaky Hollow is unmapped. We take care of our own and live off what we can.
I felt Glimmer roll her eyes. Hey, look, I'm just wandering to find my place. Wasn't working out back home. I'm pretty good with just about anything if you need an extra helping hoof. Got anything needing fixing? I do that pretty well. Arcane science and all that jazz. Type of pony every pony should know. You'd be surprised at how many little bits of talent I have in this noggin of mine. Could even open up a massage parlor if I wanted. Honest. To my surprise, she stared sideways at one of the big bucks approaching with a club. I felt her smile after speaking and lower her eyelids as she met his, then cast a view to his, rather well-built torso. Watching his face soften, Glimmer turned back to the elder. I could swear her smile was wider. I'm Glimmerlight. Seriously, though, needing anything fixed? I'd do it for free if it'd prove myself to you. The elder scrunched up her face, looking around at the other ponies before pointing to a nearby shed with a few bits of metal coming from the roof. Small wires led to a large searchlight.
We have the odd problem with timber wolves in this dry wood. Light scares them off, but it broke last month. We lost 3 Brahmin and 2 foals. That, and we can't purify water without it. None of us can fix things. I don't even know if we have the parts."
Glimmer went to work, respectfully canning her attitude in the wake of full deaths. She wandered into the shed. Inside was oily and seemed to be filled with a slight magical haze from the malfunctioning spark generator. But as I experienced her work, I gained an immediate respect for her skills. Telekinesis redirected wires, plugs, and jump-started circuits with startling dexterity. The buck sent to guard her moved to complain as she tossed some components out. Tutting, she stopped him entirely, raising her hoof to signal that he was to shut up and let her work. Come 6 minutes later, and the generator eventually surged to life with a climactic whine, before settling into a more content low hum. Glimmerlight seemed to sigh happily before turning to the buck.
"Seems some pony just didn't know how to keep one of these maintained. Really, half the stuff bodged in was just unnecessary. I mean gaffer tape. Really. So, can I stay?"
She highlighted the last word while wandering past him and drawing her tail across his chin. Really, was Glimmerlight seriously this flirtatious around bucks? She hadn't been here an hour! That said, I quickly realized that I knew nothing about how to appeal to any pony anyway, so how could I say whether she was right or wrong? Even quicker, I realized that I was only thinking all this to keep the feeling that I had just felt myself flirt with a buck. If I could have shivered, I would have. As she watched him wink back at her slyly, I got a sense of just how normal and relaxed this sort of activity was to her. I had no doubts that she had not gone to bed alone this night, but I couldn't feel apprehension or tightness in her body. Briefly, I wondered if this was how it felt to have higher self-esteem, but I had no frame of reference. I just felt jealous. Why had Glimmerlight shown me this? To make me uncomfortable? I was trapped in some pony else's body, unable to move for real. I was more trapped than before. Trapped as a slave in Philadelphia, then into an underground stable, then into a memory? Stuck in her past with no control at all, a slave to her life. I was being cheered. The moment Glimmerlight had wandered out of the shed, it seemed like the entire village had gathered to applaud her efforts to help protect their village. Coming from the shelters and huts, they gathered in a crowd to circle around her. Families hugged close, the safety of the lights and purifier reassuring them in one swift motion. Jokingly bowing down on her front hooves, I felt Glimmer be lifted by the bucks and be carried in a small lap of the village while laughing. She was surrounded by screams of thanks and promises that she could stay. Even the elderly mare was cracking a smile amongst the many cracks in her face as she nodded slowly. Dropping back to the ground, she was surrounded, appreciated. I felt happy. Something had gone right. She was being accepted and welcomed as one of them through simple means of proving her worth. Not as a slave or some pony less, but as some pony unique for what she could do. Hadn't that been what she had done when I'd fixed her robes? Could my past actually have little moments worth remembering clearly like this? Could Glimmerlight make me a memory orb of little Pip? Foals bounced happily away from a pony I presumed was their teacher, chanting, "The bad wolfies won't come back," over and over. They circled around her as though playing a game. Glimmerlight hugged one of them, a chirpy little young colt wearing an old floppy hat that was clearly too big for him. He squealed happily as he buried his head into her still long pink mane before returning to his mother with a giggle. For a second, I thought I caught a glint of recognition. Perhaps just that motherly look any pony missing their mom would feel. Glimmerlight was shown around, given a spare hut, and told that she could make a workshop if she wanted to help them out and bring her expertise to improve their way of isolated life. One apparently safe from all the raiders and gangs in such an isolated and self-sustaining area. Life, it was explained, wasn't easy, but it was a hell of a lot more peaceful and joyful than most places in the wastes could offer. Happiness in the wasteland, hope and friendships forming around her, potential memories to be had, the vision of a past I could never have, the home I couldn't go back to. She was filling in the gaps of my life through the gift of her own. Even as I felt it all fading, now I knew precisely why she had shown it to me. The same reason I liked to hear Sundial's voice. The past could give hope as well as terrify. I knew it wouldn't change my feelings immediately, but even as my consciousness drifted out of the hugging crowds, I knew something was different. I'd been pushed onto the first step to realize what it was like to be anything but in slavery. I emerged on a sofa within a medical waiting room, like waking from a hazy dream. I stretched and groaned as my own ruined body reminded me it once more had my presence within it. Gazing around at the darkness of the stable, I began to miss the feelings of seeing an open world around me all the more. But no, it hadn't been freedom. Not like Protégé meant. I had been entrapped to one path. Even if it had helped, no memory was going to free me. But it was a beginning, a start to begin to realize what Protégé had so teased me with. Feeling movement and warmth close by, I shifted, finding Glimmerlight kneeling down beside me, waiting for me to properly wake up before speaking in case she startled me. For all her flirty nature, she did know how to care, that was for sure. What she had given me was a true gift, that, even if I was scared and upset by the past, I didn't need to fear every aspect of it. She smiled, stroking my rather straggly mane with a hoof. So, you understand? I didn't know what else to do. Something drove me. I couldn't explain why. I simply leaned forward and tightly hugged her. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. For once my tears were not from pain.